Hi, folks. I'm Don Meissner, and I want to welcome you to this segment of Up North NY Chat. Now, this is going to be a pretty interesting segment. I'm going to tease you a little bit, but something is going to happen here that takes place more often than not when we're muskie fishing. It's a phenomenal occurrence, and I'm going to let Dave Swanson and Brian Coakley, who are fishing this day, talk about it. I also have Eddy here because Rust is, in my mind, our muskie fishing guru on these small waters. And the same thing that you are going to see happen has happened to both Rust and I. So let's take a look at this video now, and Dave and Brian can sort of let you know what's happening.
So Brian and I had gone fishing this day, and I think, Brian, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first time we'd ever gone. And the next thing I knew, we were fishing a very small stream, as you can tell, and you hooked a bass. And then the next thing, as I recall, the bass got pretty heavy. And we realized that you had a muskie holding on to the bass, and I'm in the process of saying, okay, just go easy and bring him over. And you can see from that the bass escaped just as the muskie ended up in the net. First time I think either of us, certainly the first time that I'd caught one. I'd had many of them grab a bass and then let go. First time I ever had one make it all the way to the net. Brian, you may want to comment about this at this point because you're holding the bass and I'm holding your muskie.
Yeah, well, this was just one of the most exciting things I'd seen. I remember as a probably in high school when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, my brother and I were fishing, and we had something similar happen in the Grass River, just down from where SUNY Canton is, and we weren't able to net the muskie. And so when this happened, it brought back all these feelings, these reminders of what a tremendous power these fish have and how aggressive they are. It was fantastic.
And we get ready to let the fish go, and I'm trying to give you instructions, but it took off very, very healthy. It swam right off into the stream, and it was sort of a great experience, particularly since it's the first time I've ever gotten one all the way into the net. I did a little slow-mo of the video so you could actually see where the fish it comes into the net and lets go of the bass all at the same motion. But that was quite an experience from my perspective.
Well, I got to tell you, looking at that, it sure brought memories back to me. I know, Rust, you and I have fished many times when this has happened. I guess the question is, why does it happen so often? These streams are so full of food for these muskies, with thousands of frogs jumping into the water and the muskies laying along the bank, hitting the frogs, tons of redfin suckers, shiners, and walleyes, and every kind of food in there, and yet you hook a bass and just be ready. You know, what do you think, Russ? Why do you think this happens so often?
You know, Don, you always ask me, or you ask me quite often, why I love muskie fishing. And if that video right there doesn't answer the question why I love muskie fishing, even though it didn't happen to me that day, you know, you ask the question, what happens there? What are they thinking? What are they doing? How are they behaving? Muskie fishing for me is a study in their species behavior. And when I go out muskie fishing, I can almost tell within the first 10 or 15 minutes the mood of of all the muskies on that day. If they're in an aggressive mode and I throw a lure near one, they're coming after it and they're coming hard. That muskie there that Brian got a hold of, that grabbed onto Brian's bass, was seriously aggressive. What amazes me is the tenacity. That was tenacious. It held on all the way through getting in the net. That blows my mind, because as often as that happens, and it's not terribly often, but it's often enough to have stories about muskies hitting bass. I've had a handful of them myself. I think in the future shows, we're going to see some of those videos, and we'll tell more stories about how that can happen and does happen. That muskie right there is the first, and well, maybe not the only, but the first certainly muskie I've seen grab onto a fish that has been caught and then will end up in a net. That is a tenacious muskie right there. And it was a beautiful fish, by the way, Brian.
Brian, I got to ask you something. Now, when we start looking at that video, the muskie had already struck the bass. But tell us what it was like. Here you've hooked the bass. We're in a tiny segment of the water. You can see how small the water is here. And to think of something that big in there. But what was it like when that thing hit?
Well, first of all, I think if I remember right, it rolled a little bit, so you could see a little roll in the water, and so you know something's happening. You're not quite sure what it is, but you got a fish on this with this bass that's already fighting pretty well. And so I think I had many emotions go through my head. One of which was that we're in a small boat, we can tip over pretty easily. The second is you got a lot of logs down in the water, so you're thinking about, is this gonna start running and get caught up? Just watching the video, my heart started pounding right away, thinking about all those thoughts of what's going to happen. Are we going to be able to get this in? And it was phenomenal. And so the fact that the fish stayed with us long enough, stayed on that bass long enough to be able to get them in the actually into the net, to be able to pick the fish up, and it was a beautiful fish. It was just a healthy. Strong, not a large muskie in terms of muskies, but just a beautiful fish. And it was exciting to be able to hold it up and get a picture with it.
And he certainly wasn't hard to get off the hook.
No.
Well, that's really the beauty of all this. There's so many aspects to what this experience is about, and it all happens so fast. We can't plan for it, and all of you watching can't imagine what it's like if you're there. Things are even grander than what we can see, even though we try to capture it for the camera. But again, what we're trying to do is show you some of the tremendous moments, the things that build memories, and what keeps us going back on these little rivers and trying to catch a muskie. Until next time, folks, I hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll see you right here on another Up North NY chat.